Hey friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge, and we've got something a little bit different today, the Kizer Pinch. It's been around for a few years. This red color just came out last year in 2021. There's 4 different colors of G10, 2 versions of brown, a coarse micarta and a more fine micarta. This red, there's a black micarta with a black blade, a tri-coat on the blade, and there's a black G10 version. The black micarta with the black coated blade, that's the only one that's coated. The rest are all stonewash finish. We've got an attempt at a modern pocket Scandi grind knife. It's a slip joint. It's a detent slip joint. We've got 2 long fullers that behave as nail nicks. And yeah, that's not very common. You don't find a lot of pocket Scandi grind knives. The blade is 3.1 inches. So yeah, if you need a 3-inch knife, this is not going to be it. But other than that, it's a small little Scandi grind knife. There's pros, there's cons. Stick around. We're going to go over both of those in just a second. First, we're going to look at the price of this knife. How much does it cost? Generally, Kizer charges $59 for the pinch. That's US dollars at stores in the United States. Since all the stores are the same price, they probably have an agreement that sellers have to sell it all for the same price. Thankfully, you've got a 10% discount code for White Mountain knives where you can save 10%. So coupon code CCE at everything at White Mountain Knives. And that brings it down to $53.10 American, which equals roughly 68 Canadian, which is, I guess a reasonable price for this knife. In Canada, Integrity Knives, where you can also get a 10% discount with the same code CCE, it's listed at $84.99. So with the 10% off, that's $76.49 Canadian. So either 68 Canadian or $76.49 Canadian. You decide where you want to spend your money, because it's a slip joint knife. It is legal in Canada. You're not going to have, well, I can't guarantee it, but there's nothing illegal about this knife, even remotely illegal. So, you can buy it anywhere you want and have it imported. And that's just the way it goes. That's roughly the prices that this is going to cost. Let's do our size comparison. We'll have to zoom out a bit for that. That's as far as I can zoom right now. There's the Ontario Rat 1, which is quite a bit bigger of a knife. It doesn't really compare at all. We've got the San Remu 7010, and that's a little bit smaller, but it's close to that size. You've got roughly the same kind of handle size, and it's a little bit thinner, of course, but it's roughly that kind of size. What do we have? We've got a straight back with a Scandi grind. It's stonewashed all over. We've got this fuller that's almost half of the blade has the fuller in it, right at that spot, a little bit less. Goes on both sides. Nicely made. It works well because it's right there in the hollow part of the handle. It's easy to get that in your fingers and pull it out. You don't need to use the edge of your nails. Ooh, I got a bunch of that ink left over under my nail. I put ink at the bevels, and I use that to measure the angle of sharpening. I've got a video that describes how I measure what angle it's sharpened at. I didn't measure the main bevel. Most Scandi grind knives are, beveled around 13 degrees, the main bevel. Some a little bit more, some a little bit less. It's roughly around that. And that's how they can come to a very sharp edge, but that edge is a little bit delicate. So a lot of companies put a micro bevel on their knives. Like Mora puts a little micro bevel. You can almost not see it along the edge of their knives. Kizer, I think, made a mistake. They put a fairly big bevel at the end, the sharpening bevel. And the angle's not too bad. It's around 20 degrees along the straight edge, and here at the leading part, it's quite a bit less. but they took away so much steel, you're not going to be able to sharpen this knife very many times before you're just going to have to be at such a great angle. It's defeating your purposes of a knife. Or you'll have to take off this main bevel. They should have put on if they're going to do this bevel, they should have put on a tiny little micro bevel and not this big of a grind. I guess they just treated it like a regular knife. If you take a look at how wide that edge bevel is, it's the same on this 7010 as it is over there on that pinch. So that's the biggest con I have on this knife. It's not properly sharpened. Sharpener's choil is too small. Scandi grinds don't usually have sharpener's choils, but with the way they did this bevel, the gradual plunge and stuff, they put on a sharpener's choil, and that's just fine. They just should have made it a little bit bigger. The badging on the knife, it says pinch right there, and then the designer, Rolf Helbig. So good design for the most part, Rolf. Thank you very much. On this side here, it says Kizer with their logo, and then right there, N690, and then the model number. And that last digit can change depending on the color. So that's pretty much it for the blade. How well does the pivot perform? Well, it's got pretty good, pivot. It's fairly smooth. It stops wherever you stop, though. It doesn't keep going anywhere. The second con, these are the two big cons on this knife, is they use a single detent on this. So it functions almost exactly like a detent on a liner lock. So you've got your liner lock arm, and when the knife is closed, there's a ball that's on that liner lock, and it holds the knife in. Except for, in this case, it's holding the blade open. It works exactly the same way. I believe they should have done a double detent, one on either side, and then that way, when it's open with a little more force. Now it just takes very little bit of pressure to close the blade. So it's softer than a traditional slip joint. A traditional slip joint's got a spring at the back, and it holds the blade in the open position quite stiff sometimes. This is just very easy for this to start to close. It's got the same detent holding it in the closed position, and it feels like it's a stiffer detent in the closed position than it is in the open position. Maybe it's just because I've got more leverage, because here I'm pushing and here I'm pulling. But in either case, in the open position, it should have had a double detent. I'll show you what we've got inside the pivot a little bit later on in the video. The handle, we've got a straight back handle. We've got a backspacer. There's just a little bit of jimping on the end of the backspacer right there. And that's all there is to it. We've got two body screws. They are T6 button screws that are inset. You know how much I love that style. And of course, I'm being sarcastic. If you've not been on this channel before, I like flush screws, not button screws that are sunk in. We've got a pocket clip that actually goes on either side. Now, on this side, you can see that the screws are angled along with the angle of the end of the handle. When you put it on this side, it's angled the other way. So there's that. On the left side, it just looks so ugly. You've got, a recess there, but a bump here. It just looks wrong. I'll try to give you a side-to-side picture that I'll edit and post right here. I wish they would have made a second pocket clip and made it work the same way instead of just sharing it on both sides. Or, better yet, this slip joint knife does not need a pocket clip on the left side. And I'm left-handed, and I'm saying that. So, in my opinion, they should have just left off those holes at all. Because going into a left side pocket, sure, you put this on the left side and you've got the blade side, if you put it on the back of your pocket, let's say this is a left pocket, but it's not. you know how usually you go like this and you put it in and the blade is at the end of your pocket right here. Got to zoom out just a bit more. So that keeps it safe in there, right? So the blade can't come out because there's a seam there. So on the left side, it's the opposite. So on the left side, it's over here, and the blade is sort of exposed in the pocket. But there's nothing anywhere to catch on to make this blade come out, and the detent holds it in very well. So I don't mind using this right-handed in the left side. The pocket clip itself, with that scoop coming up, it's not hot in the hand, and when you put it in your pocket, that's how it looks. You've got a fair bit of knife sticking out, but it's not bad. I don't mind. And the button screws create grip for you to pull it out. I don't mind that it's not a deep carry pocket clip. This is not a speed deployment knife. This is not a self-defense knife. This is a folding urban kind of woodcraft knife. An urban bushcraft knife, maybe you want to call it. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So that's what we got. I'm going to make a little more light here. Hopefully that's a little bit better. So there's that. Yeah, it's okay. No lanyard hole. If they're going to make this like an urban Scandi grind, maybe they should have put in a lanyard hole. I don't use lanyards mostly, but some people would like that. I think a lanyard hole would be more preferred than having a left side pocket clip. But that's just my opinion. Other people have different opinions, which is totally valid. All right, now it's time for me to take this thing apart and show you how it's constructed. So here is how it's made. We've got 6 washers. Yeah, we've got one little phosphor bronze washer there, still a very thin one. And then we've got another thin phosphor bronze with a thin, I don't know, modern material. Probably a Teflon washer, a white Teflon washer there. 2 bigger washers here, white Teflon and a phosphor bronze, and then another phosphor bronze one there. I didn't pay close enough attention when I took it apart. I know that the smaller washers are on the side that has the detent, so you can see the 2 detent holes on the blade right there. And the other side, there's nothing. Here's the detent arm with the detent ball, and that's what holds it open. They could have easily put one on this side. There's a Sandra and Mew likes to do that, put double detents on their slip joint knives, which I really like. The screws, they're pretty good quality. There's zero, well, I can't say zero. There's very little chance of these stripping out. They're just a decent little screw. And the T8 is a good screw too. Now there is a D-shaped pivot pin in here, the flush side over there, so that can't rotate, quite nice. And there's the stop pin. Very simple construction. And there you see the back spacer. One thing I forgot to mention before is blade alignment. It's quite good. There's not much room in there. There's very little space, but it fits pretty much evenly between them. So that's quite good. Sizes, dimensions, weights, all that kind of stuff. N690 stainless steel, which is a pretty good budget stainless steel. I don't have any big problems with it. No concerns. It's an okay, good budget steel. I quite like it. The weight of this knife is 77 grams. That's 2.7 ounces. That's quite good. Sharpness from the factory, 175 bests. It's not as sharp as the average. The cutting edge length, a straight line from the heel of the blade to the tip, is 78.8 millimeters. That's 3.1 inches. Blade length, tip to the closest spot on the handle, 77.9 millimeters, 3.07 inches. So, yeah, it's just over 3 inches, which doesn't quite make sense to me. The thickness of the blade is 2.77 millimeters. That's 0.109 of an inch. The blade depth, it's pretty much even across most of the length. 20.7 millimeters, 0.815 of an inch. How thick is it behind the grind? Since it's not a micro bevel, it was easy to measure how thick it is just after that sharpening grind, and that is 0.69 millimeters, 27 thousandths of an inch. The grind angles, let's do the main straight section, 20.4 degrees, 20.3 degrees. And then on this side, the straight part here, 18.6 degrees, and the transition was right at the belly. And on this side, the straight part was 16.5 degrees, and of course the transition's at the belly. So not very well sharpened, in my opinion. Not terrible. It could be a whole lot worse. A lot of Scandi grind knives have about a 20-degree micro bevel, 20 degrees per side. So, it's not bad. It's just it could have been a whole lot better. The handle length, 97.9 millimeters, 3.85 inches. The grip area, it's not quite 9 centimeters, about 8 3/4 centimeters, a bit under 3.5 inches. The thickness of the handle, not counting the pocket clip or the screws, just on the micarta, it's 11.35 millimeters, which is 0.447 of an inch. And the handle depth within the grip area is the same if you're open or closed, because the blade sits inside. So the handle depth this way is 23.3 millimeters, 0.917 of an inch. And the total length of this knife from tip to tail, 176.9 millimeters, 6.96 inches. So 7 inches basically. Around 4, around 3, which is pretty good proportions. So what are my final thoughts, my summary? What do I think of this knife? I don't think an awful lot of people are going to want this knife. Well, they might want it as a novelty a little bit to have, a pocket Scandi grind, but to actually use it for hard use, I don't know. It's not that good. The two big things again, I wish they had a double detent on to hold it open so that'd be more strength, more pressure that you need to close it. And I wish they would have just put a micro bevel on here, or, left it totally flat, came to a perfect apex. And then if the consumer wants to put a micro bevel on it, let them have that choice. But now the choice is taken away from the consumer. They have to put, this grind on it, or they got to spend a lot of time taking the entire bevel down if they don't want a micro bevel. You can sharpen this thing a couple times, and then it's just going to be brought further back into the blade, and it's just going to turn that edge. Either you have to go, a greater angle, which is not that good for cutting, or you're just bringing that back and you're getting a thicker and thicker and thicker behind the grind, which makes it less effective as a cutter anyways. So there's that. Did I use this for a little bit of bushcrafting, kind of woodcrafting kind of work? Yes, I tested it out. It's okay. It's not good for using the tip for anything because it's going to snap closed on you. And so you can't really use the tip of this knife, which is unfortunate because in a lot of woodcrafting, bushcrafting stuff, you do use the tip of your Scandi grind knife. So it really needs to be, I think, a Scandi grind needs to be a locking folder or a fixed blade. It's just my opinion. Other than that, the materials are pretty good. The design looks good. It feels okay in the pocket. It's, no problems in there. It's light. It's small. It's an okay knife. Are you going to buy one? Have you bought one? What do you think? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you everyone for watching this far, or as far as you watched. If you only watched a few minutes, you're not hearing me at all now, so why am I bothering? Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And remember, friends, cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Bye for now.